like to give you today a proposal for the Smart University Foundation on a cooperation. We entitled what we would like to offer you publishing as a service, and you will be seeing why. I would also just like to say something why the previous talk was so difficult. I think the transponder didn't connect to the slides, and then of course there was a video problem. So I don't have videos, so I hope that this time it works better. Okay. So the Smart University Foundation has many, or is built on various pillars. And one of these pillars is smart education, smart research, smart people, and smart campus. While we think that we can help you with the first four, we can definitely not help you with the smart government and smart influence. I think that is something the members of the Smart University Foundation have to take care of themselves. But we have a proposal to make how the Smart University Foundation can deliver smart services to its members. A quick introduction who we are. I'm the CEO of a publishing house called IntechOpen. I mentioned that in my introduction. I was heading quite a large, very traditional press in Germany, 300 people. We had branches in Boston and Beijing. We collected everything with a B, Basel and Berlin. But then the open access paradigm came along, and the open access paradigm is introduced primarily by the European governments and predicts that everything which has been supported by the governments with regard to research needs to be published in open access. And this is where the owners of this company, both are roboticists. They are from Croatia. They received their training in Vienna and started a journal which was called at that time Science for All, so which was very altruistic. And then they turned what was Science for All into a business model for themselves. They started to publish journals in robotics because that's what their home was. And then a couple of years ago, they switched to open access books. This platform I'm going to talk about can do everything, but currently our business model and the main output is in books. So since the inception of the company, they have roughly spent about 1 million in the technology in order to transform the platform in what it is today. Whoops. Sorry. Okay. So what I try to summarize what has changed just in the past couple of years. So in the previous years, libraries and also currently pay for their own collections, so those who have money can have a brilliant library. Those who do not have money are dependent on donations or have to be very smart to build up their little print collections or their ebook collections. Libraries, I think, are very important in general, but they also have to keep up with modern life. So libraries always have a very static reality, or they display very static reality. Whatever gets into their catalog needs to be cataloged, and then the students have to find it. And in many countries, also storage is a problem. So the digitization age brought many merits along. Then in Europe, we had a central reform, because when you published, the academics had to give up their copyright to the publisher. So either it was forever or for a very substantial period of time. And also, that, I think it was just what we in Germany called a Zeitgeist, so just the spirit of the time we live in, that was not appropriate anymore, because the person who owns the intellectual right should also hold the intellectual right forever, and not the publisher. So the open way, which then led to open access, is built on different paradigms. So before, the press went to libraries and tried to sell as many copies as possible, and therefore to refinance themselves. In the open access way, you also give money to the publishing house for a service they provide you. And the service is a service the customer determines, not the press determines. And then the publications are shared with the rest of the world, and therefore it has many positive effects. So first of all, there's no waiting time. Secondly, the person who is associated with the article gets the credit, and possibly also not the editor even of a book, but the individual. And the university or the foundation which sponsored the publication also gets a credit. And they have a very tight control of what they spend for what. So it's not going into a dark hole, which is, in my metaphor, it's the library, but it's directly visible and it's very measurable. So open access publishers constantly report back to the people they got money from, and how it is used and where it is used. Another problem, which also my predecessor, Professor Schrören, I do not know whether I pronounce her name correctly, has said, is that learning has completely changed. So learning is not taking out a book and sit in the library and read it, but it's very digital. So all the information you would like to have is on your fingertips. And you do not want, would like to have it at all times, so 24/7, on your mobile phone, if possible. And you do not even want to rely on opening hours of libraries. So also, of course, we live in the digital age, why not embrace that possibility while not ruling out that you can also produce a print version of the same content. So the advantages of open access publishing as such is you have a free access to the content, and it is, because I like that smart very much, it helps you to support a smart education of your students. You can provide, or you can just send them a link to the material they should read, and they can do it. And I think there are also no excuses anymore that the library was closed or whatever was closed. So, but they can do it also at home in their, at their kitchen table if they want. It gives you increased visibility of the creators who have published open access, so the credit goes directly back to the creators of the content. And something which they can also then go with a number of downloads or with a number of citations to go back to their administration and can tell them, thanks, you paid me for carrying out good research and for good teaching, and here are the results. What is also possible in this model is that you find new friends you would have never thought about. So if your research ends up in a book or in a journal in a library, the library will not report back to you who has used it and where it was used. So maybe you can find a missing link to your research in South Korea in a laboratory which you would have never expected. And if you see that the number of downloads is in, I don't know, in this very particular university in South Korea, well, you better turn to them and say whether you can work together in the future. So all of that would be invisible in traditional publishing. Citations is the currency academics are paid in. And I had the honor to be invited to a talk in Ankara, also by the Smart University Foundation. And we had an interesting discussion on impact factors and the importance of impact factors. And I claimed that impact factors is a thing of the past, because it gives you nothing more than the average download in a journal in 2 years. But it never tells you anything about the excellency of an author who has published in this journal or in this book, because it doesn't go directly back to that person, but it only refers back to the excellency of the journal. And therefore, I also think, or I claim that this is a thing of the past, because the digital age enables you to be much more precise, and you can drill it down to the person who has brought to you the high citation. The unrestricted distribution is clear because it's not hidden behind a paywall, because it had already been published and it had already been paid for by somebody, sometimes a foundation, sometimes a university, sometimes the industry, but once it is paid, it is available for everybody. And then I think this is a very important point for the Smart University Foundation, because the Smart University Foundation tries to enable universities to get suddenly on the table. You become visible. So the interesting example Bassem has mentioned of the university in Malaysia, they 100% carry out a very, very important work to their students, but also to community. And maybe, as I said, there is a missing link in this university. Somebody carries out as a research or as a teacher, and he will never, ever find somebody he or she can work with in Istanbul. But so when a research is important and gets seen and cited very often, then it suddenly becomes visible, and then suddenly this institutions has a standing, and we don't always, it is not so important to point to the Harvards and the MITs or the Oxfords and the Cambridge anymore, but I think it is more of an empowerment of the universities, of the smaller universities, which do an incredible important work, and a work which they can carry out to retain more attention, or which they can then freely share. So why it is so, or what the difference makes, I have explained into this slide. So an open access book gets 50 times more cited than something which is behind a wall. That means you're seen 50 times more than if you would end up on a shelf in a hidden library. And they are 7 times more downloaded than in an open access book or in an open access publication as such. And it is not, while the library could never ever give you a number how often it was read, because you just check out the publication and then you sit at the table, read it, but nobody ever registers the name, nor does somebody report the name back to the publisher or to your administration. And so this is a number from last year. So we had 146 million visits to our website. And as I said, I repeat, measuring in a measurable way. So this is not like fake downloads, but it is downloads which we can report back to the authors and which we can report back to the institutions. So, and now there's some drumming because I'm presenting an idea to you how the Smart University Foundation and our press could work together. I mentioned before that we had invested roughly $1 million into the technological setup of this digital platform, which is able to carry out everything which I also have mentioned. And what we now offer the Smart University Foundation is to be their white label our platform to them. That means, and that goes very much along with the philosophy of the publishing house, and I would say it is my philosophy that the publisher is not important. It is all about the universities. It's all about you. And the publisher, of course, plays an important role, but just as a service provider. So we have developed the technology, we know how the workflows work, we know all the tricks of the publishing world which you need, being present in abstracting and indexing services, etc., which would be very difficult for institutes to establish themselves, because that's, simply speaking, too expensive. So what I have proposed to the Smart University Foundation is that the Smart University Foundation launches or establishes a Smart University Press. And that Smart University Press is then the center point of all universities which they work with. So you do not have to be afraid. That does not mean, and I know that this would never ever be possible, to direct your academics and tell them that they now, as of tomorrow, have to work with the Smart University Press to get their books published or their journals published. No way. You can never ever influence academics. They do what they want, so I know that. But you can offer them a very nice outlet, and you can tell them, if you wish, you could also publish with the Smart University Press. What I also find very attractive as an idea, but we are in no position to ever tell the Smart University Foundation what they should do, is to establish something which is a shared interest. Like an introduction into algebra is very, it's absolutely neutral. Or in some guidelines for universities which are shared. And so it is not, maybe one university develops this content, this book, but potentially 27,000 universities profit from that book. And I think this is the smart idea behind that proposal. So what we would like to do is, we are also, as a publisher, we are in no position to deal with 27,000 universities at the same time. I think we wouldn't even be able to deal with 200 universities at the same time, but we can centralize everything, and the Smart University Press has to invest very, very little to establish basically one person who is, for us, the contact partner and who is able to upload the digital content on our platform, which we then take, and then we do all the publishing services which a normal publisher does. So here I have summarized the idea how it could work like, that the Smart University Foundation helps the partners to organize the publishing cooperation. So they have a very vital role. They are your contact. They are also our contact, but in a different way. The Smart University Foundation is there to help universities and to become smarter. So the Smart University Foundation could establish a review process or help universities to establish a review process. And they could also, in cooperation with its member universities, decide on which of the publications are most needed. So they have a curating function in the overall interplay. Then the Smart University Press is the go-to institution. So something or an office where the universities go to and say, oh, by the way, here's an introduction into history, or I have had a brilliant workshop on artificial intelligence, and I would like to see this published and get widely known and cited. Then they would contact not us, but they would contact the Smart University Press, and they would then do their quality measurements to either accept it or reject that publication. And so once that reviewing process and the acceptance is done, handled by the Smart University Press, they would then hand it down to IntechOpen, and we would then deliver PDFs, which can be transformed into books. We will definitely produce XMLs, which we also would give back to the research institutions, so that the research institutions can carry out further research with them. We would then handle the abstracting and indexing systems. We would also take care of the fact that we would not make a book citable, but each individual article, which receives an individual DOI, that's a digital objective identifier, as you know, if you do not know the abbreviation. So it receives more than an individual responsibility in the overall publishing process. So once the review process is done, once the processing process is done, we can deliver the following. We can deliver an open access book, but we can also deliver a print book, and we can also deliver an e-book. And why we do that is owed to the fact that print is not dead, and print can be ordered. And we see, funny enough, we see an increase of print sales, but to individuals, not to institutions. So we have made sure that all our products are also visible on Amazon, and we have partnered up with another company called Books on Demand. And Books on Demand makes sure that the content shows up into your library catalogs and in other sales channels, and from there it can be ordered. So there's no missing out on the traditional channels, but it's just smarter because it opens other access to the content too. So, and then, as I said in my introduction, we as IntechOpen, we are not important So we would from our website, so our website looks very, very different. By the way, if you now should look, it's in remake by mid-November. It will completely appear in different colors and in a different design. But this is that's just a mock-up. So the proposal is that the Smart University Foundation forms the Smart University Press and decides on their own image. And this is just how it could look like. So this is the digital image. Also, the books can be designed. I forgot to mention one important thing. Of course, I would expect that the Smart University Press co-brands with, let's say, the University of Southern Denmark, or co-brands with a Turkish university. So the university, which brings the content to the table, gets a visibility too. I think that is important, and I think this is the Smart University Foundation, as we are, is just an enabler for your research, and I think that's the crucial point in the whole presentation. And as you can see, so the measurements we have established on this platform is that you can see the chapter downloads, how often it is downloaded. You can also see how often it was cited. And then the WOS is the World of Science Citation Index. And the other indexes, dimensions, and old metrics shows you who has used your content and engaged with it, forwarded it in Twitter, made comments on LinkedIn, etc. So all of that is measurable, and that can be very useful for the authors to improve their work further and to work on the research further. And it's also very important for the institutions to get a feeling whether what they produce or whether what their researchers produce is of interest or whether it isn't. So here is just a mock-up of a chapter page. It follows exactly the same principles. It just shows you that we also think of print and not only electronic. Even we would consider ourselves as a very electronic company. So the print product, that's how our books look like. They have this bright red ribbon, whether you like it or not. That's what one of the designers once thought was very attractive. And so if we would transform that, it could look as you wish, but I would very much recommend that you also have a design which looks like Smart University Press. And then where it says SUP, then of course, then there would also be another logo from the university of the origin of the research. So the design goes also to the pages, which is very important because sometimes student or other researchers just download individual pages. So you do not want to lose that identity on every single page as well. And here are our distribution partners. So the only takeaway message here is whatever gets produced on that platform gets visible globally. There are no restrictions. What is also important to note is, so our platform is quite powerful, but it's not the most powerful one. So we have one person in our department, and that person does nothing but distributes the electronic information which sits on our platform to a multitude of other electronic platforms, so that it gets even more distributed and more used. So, and these are, so this is how we would report back to you, or to the Smart University Press. We would give you, all of the measurements, but also a sales report. Because if it was us to sell something in print, there is an income. And the income would then go back to the Smart University Press. And I will come back with another slide which explains how I personally envisage that, and which summarizes the proposal to the Smart University Foundation. So, and these are the reports. That's how the reports look like when we walk them back to the authors. So it is very, very easy and very, very visible. Like you see how often you have been used, where, why. Was there, let's say you got a good review, was there then a peak in the uptake of your research or not? And I think it's very useful for the individual author to shape their own identity. So I forgot to mention one important thing. So while I'm speaking in English, but being a German mother tongue speaker, have produced my PhD in English, I of course know how difficult it is to express yourself in English. It's awful, it's a pain. Again, just coming back to also my punchline, but we are living in a digital age. Why should we all do that? So why shouldn't you publish in any language you like, in the language which is preferred by your students? So if you have beginners, they have a hard time to read English and even more to read and to write English. So I don't see any problem why this can not be done in any language which is present in this room today. Once I engaged with, or suddenly I saw myself quoted in an Arabic conversation on LinkedIn, and the only thing which I saw was my name, nothing more. But I downloaded it, and I knew what they were talking about, and it was about what I'm also saying here. It's the empowerment of the local languages, and that I was very much in support of it. So we have no difficulty to typeset anything in any language which is spoken in this world. And something which is of a local interest, let's say written in Arabic, I'm sure that it will be most of the times ignored in my home country. However, who deals with international relationship, for example, or with some interesting research on oil, certainly downloads also the Arabic paper. And I must say that the electronic translators got so smart that you get a lot out of it, and at least you then can contact the researcher and continue the conversation if you wish. And then Bassem and I, we have toyed with a couple of ideas. Because again, so we very much respect that what the service the Smart University Foundation carries out is not in their own interest, it is in the interest of the summary of their members. I finish in 1 second. So we were thinking of forming a Smart University Academy. And then, of course, it would look like the following. So we have the Smart University Foundation, and the Smart University Press makes some money via the print, and then can reinvest, and can reinvest if it is your member vote into the education. So we have found a potential partner. Nothing what I'm saying here is set in stone. It's just a proposal. It's Enago. Enago is a worldwide operating company. And what they would do is they would help, or they could carry out tailor-made courses for the students, how to get better published. They would correct papers. They can write abstracts. And they can do webinars for the students. So this is, like I would call it, this is future tense, yet very, very interesting particular when you think about why it's worth to join the Smart University Foundation and how the Smart University Foundation can help each of its members to develop. So here in summary, that's why I think you should do it. In particular, it's much cheaper than invest into normal publishing. So it removes capital costs and it serves your own your communities. It can create new revenue streams. It speeds your transition into open access. And it builds a strong global brand for the Smart University Foundation and for yourself. And one important thing, which is very much, you know, a thesis, a punchline in Europe, is the universities are back in control of what they do. And finally, most importantly, for each of the member institution itself, it enhances your reputation, and you will suddenly appear on the landscape of academic research where you may have had difficulties to appear and to participate in. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Now we can have questions. If anyone has a question, can you raise his hand? Yeah, we can do that. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your very informative and useful presentation. I would like to ask you that I know the IntechOpen, I edited a book in your also. But as you know, most of the important publishers, such as Elsevier, Wiley, Springer, Nature, Oxford, Cambridge, are still cited by the ISA Web of Science. So most of the universities all over the world still take into account this situation reports, as you know. So as a IntechOpen, do you have any collaboration or work on this process to all your chapters or books will be cited or seen in the Web of Science, ISI?
The only thing, so publishers are neutral. So the only thing which publishers do is they upload it on the Web of Science. And then the citation happens there. Or, I mean, it happens in all other journals, but the citation, if I have understood your questions correctly, because there's a little echo here, sorry. Then the citation happens on the Web of Science. And what you also describe is, that's very much of a journal thing, while we have been presenting here a book proposal, while I was also saying, with the right partner, we possibly would open the journal chapter again. So I do not know whether this helps, but just to show you what we are working on. So we work on huge major reference works. We have one on space medicine right now. That consists of more than 2,000 academics and 100 books. And of course, when they get cited, so I'm not thinking in a book anymore, I'm thinking in a database. I didn't use this word here, but this is a real base of, that's a library of knowledge which becomes important. And this is a journal-like publication, and this will get an ISSN. And then it gets citation, or it can get cited in the Web of Science, but there's no bribery or anything if you meant to intend that. But I'm glad to pick up the conversation in the break. And good to meet an author from us.
Any more questions? Do we have? Yeah. We can do that. Is it a question or contribution? Question will be better.
Okay, question. Actually, he read into my mind, the other speaker. I think she didn't clarify, because there was a debate about it already before he spoke, the others contributor. You know, it's like a hurricane in academics. We say generally, if you don't publish, you perish. So, but when you flipped the slides in your indexing, abstracting and indexing, we saw Escobos and the likes, Cornell and the rest. But we all know as academics that, as far as I know, I'm very young in the field, Scopus is the highest database as far as abstracting and indexing is concerned in Europe. And ISI, which is the Web of Science, like the professor spoke, the Thomson-Router Index, is massive in America. So if we're talking of a smart university, the best platform to showcase your idea, your innovations, whatever, it's on those platforms. So the question goes back to you, the ITech coordinator bringing us the talk. Are there plans in the future? Because we've seen books, books being published by other outlets that index in this platform. So the big question is, are there plans in the future by your organization to be subscribed to those databases in clear terms, yes or no?
I mean, yes, we have already, I mean, you mean the ISI index?
It wasn't on those...
Where?
The slides you showed about the abstracting and index.
I do not know where it is, but I can answer you that we are, so when we are not abstracted, this is not our fault. So the book citation index right now, which is also with Thomson Reuters or ex-Thomson Reuters, now Clarivat, has a huge backlog of content. But again, I think this is somehow, so the argument I try to make is it goes beyond that. Of course, we have to do all the services you expect, and we will do that. But I think the most important thing is when you want to establish a journal, you have to work approximately 3 years very, very hard in order to receive any sort of recognition. So first of all, you have to publish 20 articles in a row. Then it has to get a certain citation numbers, and then ISI accepts you as eligible publisher. So there are many hidden policies in these huge organizations which we play with. Yes, we play according to their rules, but honestly, they're complete nonsense. So why would you have to wait for 3 years in order to showcase your research? Just because Clarivat is on the stock market. That's why.